Hey guys. So for this week, we're going to be talking about decimals. We already know about whole numbers. These are numbers such as 1, 2, 3, and 4. And this year, we've talked about fractions. And we know that fractions represent parts of a whole, or numbers between two whole numbers, like a half, 1.5, 2.5, and 3.5. The mixed number, for example, of 2.5 represents an amount between two whole numbers. Well, decimals are just another way of representing fractions or parts of a whole. Before we get into representing decimals, we're going to go back to fractions, since fractions and decimals represent the same thing, which are parts of a whole. For this lesson, we're going to be using a 10 by 10 grid. So we can think of this grid as our whole, and our whole, as you know, is broken up into 100 equal pieces or 100 equal parts, which are called hundredths. If we wanted to represent the fraction 1/100ths, and we wanted to use a 10 by 10 grid to represent this visually, it would look like so. Again, our denominator is 100. That means our whole is broken up into 100 equal parts, and one of those parts are shaded. This fraction, we could say, is 10/100ths. Our denominator is 100, so that means our whole is broken up into 100 equal parts. And we have 10 of those pieces out of the 100 that are shaded. But we can represent this fraction in a different way. We can say this picture represents 1/10, and this is what I mean by that. So if we take our whole and we break it apart into 10 equal sections like so. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now my whole is broken up into 10 parts or 10 columns. And I have one of those columns that are shaded or 1/10. So we can say 1/10 is equivalent to 10/100ths. But this picture represents 30/100ths. I look at my denominator as 100. That means my whole is broken up into 100 equal pieces. And 30 of those pieces are shaded. If I want to represent this in tenths, I could say that this is 3/10. Again, my denominator is telling me how many parts the whole is broken up into. So I would have 10 parts or 10 columns. And I have 3 of those columns or parts that are shaded. So we can say that 3/10 is equivalent to 30/100ths. If you look below at this equation down here, what you're noticing, how do we get from 3/10 and make an equivalent fractions of 30/100ths? Well, we already learned this year. We're simply taking the numerator and denominator and we're multiplying them both by 10. And the reason that works, if you look, when we're going from here to here, we're basically taking our whole and we're dividing it into more pieces, and those pieces are getting smaller. They're getting 10 times smaller. Let's try another one. So if I have the fraction 7/10, I'm going to look at my denominator. It's 10. That means I'm going to be thinking about columns or 10 equal parts that my whole is broken up into. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 columns. 7 of those columns or parts are shaded. We can also think of this as 70/100ths. If I look at my denominator, it's 100. So now I'm thinking of my whole being broken into 100 equal pieces, and 70 of those pieces are shaded. So we can say 7/10 is equivalent to 70/100ths. Again, if you look at the equation below, to make an equivalent fraction from tenths to hundredths, we simply multiply the numerator and denominator both by 10. So for your practice problems, this is exactly what you're going to be doing. You're going to be making equivalent fractions from tenths to hundredths.